I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting of the Sustainability Advisory Board on Monday, May 3rd. And would you please call the roll, Brandon?
Sure can. Bob, if you could say here.
Here.
Lisa, we know is excused. Michelle.
Here.
Brad. Here. Ken.
Here.
Eric. Vic.
Here.
Pat.
Here.
Margie.
Here.
Perfect. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Excellent. Okay, let's move on to the approval of the minutes from April 5th. Would anyone like to make a motion?
A motion to approve the minutes as is.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that? Okay, Brandon, if you could call the roll, please.
Sure. Was that, I just want to make sure, was that Bob and Vic or Bob and Michelle?
That was Bob and Michelle.
Okay.
Couldn't
Okay,
really
cool.
see your lips moving, but I think I recognized the voice.
Okay, good. All right. So yeah, now we'll do the roll for the minutes, of April 5th. Bob.
Aye.
Michelle.
Aye.
Brad.
Aye.
Ken.
Aye.
Vic.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
And Margie.
Aye.
Okay. And then I don't know, the agendas were kind of confusing and messed up this month. So I don't know if you saw the last agenda that I sent out had the April 7th minutes as well, which we also need to get approved.
Oh, then we should approve the minutes of the April 7th meeting.
Perfect.
Could I have a motion for that, please?
Motion to approve the motion to bring the minutes to the floor to discuss.
And a
For April
second,
7th.
please. Second, anyone? Was that Michelle? Okay, Brandon, I guess go ahead and call the roll.
Okay, so that again, that was Bob and Michelle. Michelle, shake your head yes if that's true.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're gonna do this again. We'll get through this. Okay. Bob.
Aye.
Michelle. Are you muted?
Aye.
Okay. Brad.
Aye.
Ken.
Aye.
Vic.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Margie.
Aye.
Okay, April 7 minutes pass 7-0.
Okay. And at this time, Jim, I think we're ready for the student presentations. I would just ask the people on the board to please mute yourself so that we can hear everything that they're sharing with us as best as possible. And welcome to Mike Beardsley, who I see just joined us, so thank you. Okay, Jim, it all goes to you.
All right, can you guys hear me okay?
I can.
Great. Well, thank you to all of the members of the Sustainability Advisory Board for giving us this platform to give the presentations. And also just thanks to all of you who are in the room, students, SAB members, community members, for working with us through the COVID protocols and giving us a chance to have this in person. Of sorts, at least for those of us in this room, and hopefully the technology will work and we'll make this go as smoothly as possible. Particularly thanks to Brandon and James Rabe, who I think met with all 4 groups. I don't know, Brad, did you meet with all 4 groups? Maybe Brad Spanbauer did too. So thank you to all of you who've helped along the way. And with that brief introduction, I'm going to share our screen and bring up our first presentation.
Hello,
Ready?
everyone. My name is Sam. This is Bryce. This is Blake, and this is Jordan. And today we'll be talking about possible additives to the road salt policy in the city of Oshkosh. So currently, Oshkosh spends about $300,000 on around 4,000 tons of salt each winter. Our presentation is going to go over why road salt's a problem, what we're proposing the city of Oshkosh implement in addition to its current policy, and why this proposal would be more sustainable. So Bryce will get us started with some of the impacts of road salt.
Thank you, Sam. So I'd like to start off by discussing the economic and infrastructure impacts that salt causes. It corrodes the metal in buildings, bridges, rebar, and drainage systems, and increases the amount and size of potholes on the roads, which damages our vehicles as well. This amounts to an estimated $10 of damage per dollar of salt, according to a study by Minnesota's Pollution Control Agency, and that adds up to about $3 million a year just for the city of Oshkosh. Salt also causes a variety of environmental impacts, including leaf necrosis, as you can see in the middle picture, which happens when salt spray inhibits a plant's ability to perform photosynthesis. It is toxic to those native species, which makes room for other salt-tolerant invasive species. It's toxic to birds who try eating the grits to aid in their digestion, and attracts a lot of deer to the roads, which we all know here in Wisconsin causes a lot of traffic hazards. This salt runoff gets into our waterways, raising the chloride levels in water and the total dissolved solids, which means there's less oxygen for those aquatic species. You can see in the picture, there's a fish that's affected by salt versus one that is not. And then this is a map of Wisconsin's chloride levels. Purple is around the recommended level of 4 parts per million, while Oshkosh and other areas are well above that level in the red. So due to this concern, there's a lot of chloride sampling that happens year-round. In Oshkosh at Sawyer Creek, in October, it was measured at 71 parts per million, which is still very high. And in March, after months of salting, it jumped to 425 parts per million, which is in the chronic aquatic life toxicity rating by the DNR. We talked to a variety of stakeholders as well, including Kelly Ryer, who's an outreach coordinator at the Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance. She organizes numerous outreach workshops for the public to educate them on the impacts of salt and what they can do. She suggested that monitoring of wells and other water sources should happen year-round, and suggested macroinvertebrate sampling as well, and believes that the most important effort is public outreach and education. We also talked to James Rabe, the Director of Public Works, and he informed us that Oshkosh currently uses sand when salt won't be effective and is using a water brine machine to reduce Oshkosh's impact on the environment and infrastructure, but we believe that our proposal could help to further improve these efforts. Here are a couple other stakeholders and experts that we talked to, which will be further discussed in our report, and Blake will continue with our proposal and some benchmarking examples.
All right, thanks, Bryce. So what we are proposing to the city of Oshkosh is to implement one of the following salt additive options that is used to the salt used now: an acetate-based brine called Salt Saver, a beet juice solution called Geomelt, or a cheese brine. Additionally, we recommend that the city of Oshkosh implements an educational campaign on the negative effects of road salt geared towards the public. By providing educational material, hosting events, increasing outreach via social media, the city of Oshkosh will feel more motivated to reduce the salt used. To help us get a better understanding of what places are using as an alternative to road salt, we looked at 5 different places that receive a heavy amount of snow in the winter months. It starts here on Oshkosh using a Salt Saver on the UW campus this winter. And then as you can see, Eau Claire, Waukesha, and Lake George, New York all used a beet juice brine. Lake George, or Polk County also used a brine, but it was a little different. We're using cheese brine. UW Oshkosh was recently just added with the proposal of the Green Fund, which is an organization here on campus to implement sustainability improvements. Their choice of using an acetate-based brine called Salt Saver hopes to make a huge difference since the campus uses up to 40 tons of salt per year, which costs up to $30,000. The Salt Saver will save a lot of money and became used as a test run for the city of Oshkosh. Another place we wanted to talk more in depth about was Lake George, New York. Lake George, New York was one of the first places to implement a geomelt based with using beet juice brine. The geomelt was purchased at Road Solutions in order to help protect the highly tourist Lake George. Lake George, because of this, has ended up using 30% less road salt annually. Another location that we decided to look at was Waukesha, Wisconsin. Because of the population size being very similar and because of the river present, we were able to find that the current Waukesha policy is 70% road salt and 30% salt brine. The salt brine, which makes up the 30%, is beet juice and calcium chloride, and the results have been steady as the salt reduction has decreased 25 to 30%. Now, Jordan will talk a little bit about the cost and barriers that go along with our proposal.
Thanks, Blake. As you can see in this graph, the price per ton of salt has been rising, with hitting a new high just last winter at $77.10 per ton of salt. So now looking at some of the costs, Salt Saver by Green Earth Company is one of the more cost-saving options per 275 gallon tote. By using it, it would cut the amount of salt used in half, also saving 50% of what the city already spends on salt. It is also sourced locally, so the shipping would be relatively cheap and would lead to an overall city savings of $35,000 a year, as well as cutting damage to infrastructure from salt. Another option we looked at was geomelt, which is the beet juice brine. It would also be a relatively cheap option per tote, saving the city about 30% on what they spend on salt per year. After adding the cost of the geomelt, the city would save about $10,000 with a small added fee of the shipping, since it's sourced out of Genesee, Illinois, which is not a far drive. We also looked at a cheese brine, which would also be a cheap option, since we could possibly get the cheese brine for cheap or relatively cheap or free. But there are some barriers that I will talk about next. So some of the barriers, Salt Saver has the fewest of the barriers, since it is sourced locally and they are ready to currently work with the city. The only real barrier is they have a small sample size, but they still have worked with other cities and universities like the University of Marquette, and they also offer a full refund if there's any dissatisfaction, but they have not issued any refunds. Another barrier we looked at for beet juice, the geomelt, is the biggest challenge in having a beet juice provider near the city, with the closest beet farms being in either western Minnesota or eastern Michigan. It can also cause temporary staining to cars and roads, but that only happens if it's applied incorrectly, as well as temporarily lowering oxygen levels in the water. The biggest barrier to the cheese brine is finding a farm that could provide it, with all cheese production choosing to reuse their brine instead of paying to dispose of it. And it would also lower the oxygen in the water as well temporarily. So now Sam will talk to the sustainability of our proposal.
Thanks, Jordan. While there are some barriers that we would have to overcome to implement one of these options, by doing so, the city would be meeting its goal of reducing salt runoff pollution. Organic additives, which would be the geomelt or cheese brine, or an acetate-based solution, which would be the Salt Saver, would meet the city's goal and provide many additional benefits as well. And just to note, an acetate is a salt made of acetic acid, which is essentially vinegar, and a base, in this case, potassium or sodium. These additives would still have trade-offs, but they have fewer trade-offs than road salt alone. Some of the de-icing benefits of these additives include allowing road salt to stick more effectively to the roads. This means that less salt is necessary for de-icing and therefore less salt would be running off. They also have an increased ice melting and ice prevention capacity, and are more effective at lower temperatures than road salt alone. Some additional benefits include decreased corrosivity of vehicles and infrastructure, fewer negative impacts to roadside vegetation, less storage necessary, and salt trucks are able to go farther with the same amount of salt, meaning they spend less time and money refueling. There are trade-offs, as we mentioned before, including reduced dissolved oxygen in waterways. As you can see in the image, there is dissolved oxygen in water, and when an acetate or organic material is introduced into the water, the decomposition process uses oxygen, which leaves less for aquatic life. However, in our benchmarking research, we didn't find that any cities had reported this being a problem in practice thus far. There's also the aesthetic issue that Jordan mentioned earlier of potential staining of roads and vehicles, but when these products are properly applied, this becomes a non-issue. So overall, road salt alone has far more negatives than positives, but implementing an organic or acetate supplement to road salt would leave more positives than negatives. And with education and practice, the negatives associated with these could be further reduced. So overall, by implementing one of these additives to its current road salt policy, Oshkosh would be making a better choice for its roadways and waterways. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, are we going to take questions or are we waiting until the very end?
You know, I think that in the past, we've waited till the end, but I think with the space we're in, it might make sense to take questions now. We'll just try to keep an eye on the time as best we can.
Sounds good to me. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to, either raise your hand or just go ahead and unmute and go ahead, Bob.
Sure. So if I'm understanding the proposals correctly, well, we're still going to be using salt, but the proposal is to add one of these additives to that salt that we use, correct?
Yeah.
Yep. The organics would reduce salt use by about 30% and the acetate would reduce it by about 50%. So
Okay.
using less salt, but it's still there.
Okay.
We have a question in the room.
So, someone mentioned, I don't remember which one of you mentioned that potassium was in the additive. Sam, are you, or someone said that?
Yeah.
Potassium's in there. I know potassium in our waterways. Oh, never mind. I'm thinking of phosphorus. So ignore me. I was like, that seems like a bad idea. So, can I ask another question while I'm here? Okay. You mentioned, I saw, maybe you showed the graph, I don't remember, but the amount of money spent on salt and Oshkosh has really gone up a lot. Is that due to differences in weather, or is that just because we're getting more salt friendly, we're salt addicted, and we just want to throw more and more salt on the ground? You know what I'm saying?
This is the price that it's per ton, so the amount we use doesn't really affect that. And the city goes off of a bidding system to whoever bids the best, and that's who they get their salt from.
That's not necessarily quantity, it's.
No, that's just per ton.
Gotcha. Thank you.
This is Mayor Palmieri. I have a question. Is there anything of concern regarding our salt trucks with with mixing the additives in terms of performance by our equipment?
I don't believe we came across any issues in that regard.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Bob.
Sure. So I guess, Mr. Robbie, I wonder if in preparation of working with the students here for the presentation, if that's something, the mayor's question, if that's something you may have come across for an
I have
answer.
not. Bob, I have not. I don't have any information on that.
I'm sorry, was
Okay.
that for Tom? This is Tom from Greener. Can you hear me?
We can
Okay. I believe the question was about equipment differences with the different additives. Salt itself is corrosive to metal, and that's what's causing rust on all vehicles. Our Green Earth Salt Enhancer Salt Saver has corrosion inhibitors also mixed in with the acids. So it's actually corrosion inhibitors. You're going to slow down the corrosion of your equipment versus if it was just regular salt, just raw salt. So you should see an improvement in your deterioration of equipment.
Thank you, Tom.
All right.
And Tom, just for the record, can you state who you were? I don't know if we missed that or if it was just my computer.
I'm Tom Oddie, I'm solutions consultant company. We're based in Fond du Lac, local company.
Thank you.
So he was talking about the salt saver option that we were discussing.
Did you run into any issues or barriers with added nutrients from using organics into the waterways? Is that the whole oxygen thing?
Yeah, that was the main concern with it, is that those organics, when the bacteria gets decomposed, it draws oxygen, but it's also only temporary.
Well, thank you guys very much.
Nope. Alrighty, so my name is Tanner and I worked alongside Gabby, Aaron, Lizzie, and Garrett in creating a proposal for an Oshkosh restaurant composting program. Today, we're going to provide you with insight on some of the issues that arise from food waste, a rundown of the program that we are proposing that would help mitigate some of these issues, as well as some of the benchmarking examples and stakeholders we collaborated with in the construction of this proposal. We'll wrap things up with an overview of some of the costs that will come along with this program, as well as some of the potential barriers experienced. One of the biggest environmental issues we face today is the human-induced destruction of natural lands. This exists largely due to the formation of landfills, in which approximately 40% of all produced foods end up in landfills, making food waste the second highest contributor of wastes. These wastes lead to the contamination of soils and surrounding waterways, on top of being a key contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. In the US, food waste in landfills accounts for roughly 16% of our methane emissions. But food waste is not only an environmental detriment, but also an economic. In the US annually, at least 77 billion pounds of food is lost, worth roughly $30 billion. Instead of ending up in landfills, this food waste could be composted and converted to various forms of sustainable energy, which leads us to our program proposal for Oshkosh, where this issue would begin to see progress at a local level.
Though this issue of food waste is a global problem, there are still ways that we can combat this locally. The city of Oshkosh recognizes the food waste problem in Chapter 8 of their sustainability plan, which states as a goal to continue partnering with the renewable energy biomass digester to convert community organic waste into electricity and heat. In response to the massive food waste issue and the city's sustainability plan, we decided to propose a pilot composting program. We are recommending the creation of a fee-for-service curbside pilot program for Oshkosh area restaurant food waste, which would then be composted at the UW Oshkosh biodigester and converted to energy. We propose a program that would provide receptacles for food waste to the interested restaurants, which would then be collected by UW Oshkosh Biogas. The university has recently been able to purchase waste hauling trucks for this purpose. Routes and route frequency would be determined based on the necessity of each restaurant. Based on our survey of area restaurants, pickup twice weekly or once per week is suggested. Participating restaurants would also pay a monthly fee of approximately $45 that covers the cost of an employee driving to the sites and collecting the bins, along with maintenance and fuel for the trucks. The composting bins will be picked up and hauled to the UWO biodigester, where the food waste will be converted to clean energy. Restaurants will also benefit from joining this program, and that they will be able to boast their sustainable efforts from joining this green initiative that reduces harmful food waste while also reducing fossil fuel consumption. Erin will now discuss the successful program in Stevens Point on which we modeled our program off of.
So we use Stevens Point, Wisconsin as a benchmarking example to guide our proposal because they've done a great job in their city. It's a similar size to us, being just slightly smaller, but they also have a UW system school, so their demographics are similar to ours. Their compost services residential and business customers, and their program began in 2019. Their program is a partnership between the city and 2 local farms. Collection is done by Rising Sand Organics, which picks up 5-gallon buckets that have screw top lids on a pickup truck and transports them to White Feather Organics. White Feather Organics is in charge of composting the food waste in a windrow method, which is outdoors. It produces less emissions than other types of composting. However, it does have a long timeline of about 16 weeks to a final product. The final product is then used at the 2 local farms. Their compost program has a fee structure of about $22 a month for customers, and the subscription buys about 50 gallons of waste, which is 10 of the 5-gallon buckets. They are also able to take larger volumes of waste from customers at the request of those customers. Finally, this is an extremely successful and popular program in Stevens Point. In 2020, they were able to compost 92,000 pounds of organics in their city. And so we think it's a great example moving forward for Oshkosh. Next, we're going to hear from Garrett to learn about some of the stakeholders for our proposal.
Thank you. The first stakeholder we looked at was the Oshkosh area restaurants. We contacted and received responses from 15 different restaurants on a short 3-question survey to gauge interest in the program. There we go. First, the first question we asked is, would you be interested in a composting program? We found about half of them, 45.5%, would be interested in a composting program, and about another 18% were unsure at the time, but they would reevaluate once they see the program finalized. Second, we asked them, would you have room for a composting bin or bucket? We found again, about half, 45.5% of them, said that they would have room for them, but for the other half, it would be a potential barrier. Lastly, we asked, would you be willing to pay a fee for this? And of the 7 interested restaurants we found, 4 of them would be willing to pay a fee. So in sum, we found that there is an interest for a composting program in Oshkosh. Storing the bins could be a potential barrier for the restaurants, and about 60% of the interested restaurants would be willing to pay a fee for this. Our next stakeholder that we talked to is Brian Langoff, who is the Director of Biogas Systems and Research Development here at UW Oshkosh. And he thinks that this program could be a great way to divert organics from local landfills, as well as produce renewable energy for campus. He did say that the biodigester has the capacity to partner with these restaurants and that collection routes could be set up to collect from them. He did say, however, that costs could vary per restaurant. It really depends on the staffing, the distance they have to travel, the maintenance of equipment, the number of bins that the restaurant has, and the volume of waste that they're producing. He did say, however, that these costs could be mitigated through a reduction in garbage collection fees, saying that if 40% of the waste that they're producing is of organics, there would be 40% less trash that they're producing, meaning that it could be collected less often. To talk more about the specific costs of our program, Lizzie is going to speak next.
Thanks, Garrett.
For costs, our proposed local restaurant composting program monthly collection fee suggestion would be $45. What would be included in this collection fee would be the staff time, the administrative time, the truck costs with picking up the bins and taking them to the biodigester, while also including the fuel and maintenance for the truck. We got this information while speaking with Brad Spanbauer, the sustainability coordinator here at UW Oshkosh. As for the composting bins, the size of the bins that we propose would be 30 gallons. The cost of this bin would be $90 from the biogas program, or else the restaurants themselves can provide their own 30-gallon bin to saving the cost of that. More details regarding the costs are provided in our written report. For barriers, the first barrier that I'm going to address is that the kitchen sizes of the majority of these restaurants are relatively small in size, since we are focusing on local restaurants who are located on or near downtown Main Street. Some restaurants, based on the survey we conducted that Garrett previously discussed earlier, is that they may have some difficulty housing 30-gallon composting bins, since it may cause clutter. A way to overcome this barrier is that the more a restaurant composts the food, then they would have less garbage, which would make for more room for the 30-gallon composting bin, but more than likely they could also store these bins outside. Next would be the restaurant's concerns over the fee structure amount. This is due to them not wanting to have to pay a fee for separating their own food waste. But with time, as more restaurants join this proposed program, then the monthly fee structure amount could lower over time. In conclusion, based on this information, we believe that this would be a great fit for the city of Oshkosh. There would be significant benefits that our community would see, ranging from economic benefits to environmental benefits. Essentially, when there is less waste in our landfills, it is better for everyone. Thank you.
Any questions?
So when you were looking at this, was there any distinction or any study made in the differences between specific food waste and other biodegradable materials that restaurants produce? And the reason why I ask is most restaurants are incented not to have any waste. Have very little, but we do have other products. So was there an investigation as to what materials can and cannot be used?
Should okay. So it's going to be based on what the campus biodigester can take. So typically, it's anything that could break down in the cycle of time in which they switch the biodigester. So it's about 28 days. So most bioplastics then would not be able to go in here because they can't break down in 28 days. To compost a bioplastic would mean going to actually a high temperature facility, which of course we don't have in Oshkosh. So we're proposing something that would take just plain old regular food waste, paper napkins, that kind of stuff.
Okay. So, okay, that'll be clearer later, I guess. Also, so the fee is based on the bin, not the actual weight.
There's a lot more specific information that's going to be in our written proposal, but the fee would basically be how many times they have to come and pick up your bin. So like a week, once a week, twice a week, once every 2 weeks, it would be based on that.
Just explore the amount of food waste ending up in landfills. Was there any investigation in terms of the percentage that was actually from restaurants versus residential versus grocery stores, that sort of thing, in order to potentially augment the participants in the program?
So we weren't able to find any information that was specifically to restaurants or grocery stores or dividing it up like that. What we had was more general food waste information.
We are hoping that this would be a pilot program that would include restaurants first, and then later on it could be added to, center homes or grocery stores. This is just kind of our first idea with it.
Okay. In terms of the participants in Stephen's point, there was a quote on how many pounds of food there were. How many participants was that?
So they service, I can't remember the exact number, but between 100 and 150 customers in Stevens Point.
And was there any listing or discovery of what the barriers were for them? Like learning specifically?
What was the last part?
I don't understand that.
Okay,
The learnings
so-
they received, what was hard, what was easy, that sort of thing.
Sure. So they have a lot of issues with contamination. They don't have a biodigester there, so all of their composting is done outdoors. As you can see in the photo that's on the slide right now, it's all done naturally, and that's why they have such a long timeline. So contamination is a big one for them. But they do ongoing educational campaigns through their social media. And with all of the bin pickups, they give like pamphlets out that say, yes, you can put this in, no, you can't put this in. So we are anticipating that contamination could be an issue with our program, and educational materials would be an important part of that. There'll be more about that in our written report. Was that the whole question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So in this example, was it mostly private restaurants, or does it also include private residents?
Yep, so they service businesses and residential houses, so it's a mixture of both.
Okay.
They do also service farms and grocery stores, and there they do provide the 30-gallon size, or if it's a small business or just someone's house, is a 5-gallon size.
Thank you.
Yep.
Excuse me. So I guess my question is kind of a health code question in regards to, and Ken, you can come in here since you're a restaurant owner and such like that. Was there any permitting issues, or are there any issues that restaurateurs would have in regards to any health code violations in regards to storing and waiting for compost to be picked up at a certain area, a certain time? I guess I'm just logistically trying to think about that aspect of that. So I guess to the students, is there anything in your research and preparing for the presentation, was there any health code policies or anything that needed to be followed with that?
I spoke with Brandon from the city planning office, and he did not give me any indication that there were any barriers within the code on this. Just that if we were going to have the restaurants store this bin outside, then it'd have to be enclosed in like their garbage bin and like the fenced in area. And that was really the only thing that he said that we should worry about.
So I think the thing that we think would be successful about this program is that it is curbside, which means that it would follow the same way that, often the garbage and recycling are picked up. So it's on the curb, just like everything else.
Sure. Just a question for Brandon, quick. Brandon, in issues like this, is this something where we would consult at all with the health department in regards to any of this? And maybe Ken would know this as well. So.
Oh, it's a good point. I didn't think of that prior when I discussed it with the students, but we could definitely give a call over to the health inspector office at the county and see what they have to say about it.
Just from experience and actually discussing this with the health department, since we do some composting here, the only real issue is storage away from food preparation areas and making sure that the container is sealable. So those are their primary concerns, using something like this. Now, some participants might have logistical issues. because not everybody has a common or a fenced-in trash pickup. I'm just speaking to my experience because we're actually in a mall situation where we would actually physically have to store it inside, you know, until it's picked up. And then when it's picked up, we would actually have to take it to the truck. There's no real, so it's not like a residential thing. You put it on the curb, they can pick it up. So there's only going to be some minor things like that, and that's something that restaurants would have to work out with their tenants, I mean their landlords. So and they're not very dissimilar from the same issues you'd work out if you were doing residential at apartment complexes. So like I said, as long as you present it to the health department as separate from food preparation and consumption areas, you're probably okay, and it's feasible.
Yeah, and the other, to kind of go off Ken's point too, again, this is Brandon. You know, there's legal non-conforming situations where dumpsters are outside in the open and there is no fence around them because they've been there for a long standing time, and public parking lot that they're in is reconstructed. The fence, the refuse enclosure part of the zoning code wouldn't come into play. So for those particular scenarios, at that restaurant, it might be required to be, you know, kept indoors, or, you know, I guess it would just be something that we'd have to look at maybe case by case, or if we wanted to approve it, you know, to not be enclosed, maybe, I don't know. But that's just my preliminary thought on those legal non-conforming situations that don't have refuse enclosures.
All right, thank you very much, guys.
Just push left and right, I think.
Hello, we are the Residential Permeable Pavement Group. I'm Burgundy, this is Austin, Olivia, and Steve. First, we're going to talk about water conservation and the sustainability of permeable pavers. Then, a selection of important stakeholders, concerns and barriers surrounding permeable pavements, the costs, and then our proposal, which will be a small change to the city's residential codes by expanding pre-existing zoning regulations to citywide residential code. The Fox-Wolf Winnebago watershed has a long history of water pollution that leads to our modern-day issue of having an impaired waterway. Stormwater runoff causes pollutants to flow directly into our damaged waterways, such as phosphorus and organic nitrogens from animal feces, grass clippings, and fertilizers, which lead to toxic algal blooms in the summer that kill dogs, poison people, and especially children, and close down beaches, as well as salts, pesticides, and heavy metals. Beyond water pollution, large amounts of storm runoff also lead to issues such as shoreline erosion, flooding, loss of biodiversity, and poor refilling of our groundwater supplies. Conservation of our impaired waterways is a priority for the city. There are 10 different types of permeable paver systems, which each range in their costs, benefits, environmental impacts, functionality, and aesthetics. I won't go over the complete list now, but they will be provided in the full report. And according to a 2013 literature review from the Water Quality Research Journal of Canada, permeable paver systems do an overwhelmingly positive job at mitigating all of the issues I have previously just described by filtering out the pollutants directly from the stormwater through the soil, utilizing natural ecological processes that purify water. Of course, Effects do vary from system to system, by region, and there are costs to consider, which Austin will tell you about.
Thank you, Burgundy. So we talked to a few stakeholders, and the first was James Robbie, who is the Director of Public Works for the City of Oshkosh. His job is to ensure that there is dependable infrastructure around the city, and he has a lot of say in the final decisions of projects around the city. So some applications of permeable pavement in Oshkosh are the Senior Center parking lot, Fire Station 16, and the downtown YMCA. So overall, James and other members of the city have a positive outlook on permeable pavements because they understand the benefits of stormwater management and stormwater quality. The second stakeholder that we talked to is Professor Misty McPhee, a citizen who tried to get a permeable pavement driveway, but was ultimately shut down. The goal is to ultimately let citizens like Misty have a permeable pavement driveway. Some of the concerns. So the concerns for the city regarding permeable pavement are clay soils, which don't allow water to infiltrate through the soil, so water may pool near the surface. Construction, a deeper system may be needed, constructed to allow room for a gallery to store water. Some barriers for the residents that they may encounter are clogging, sand and gravel going into the cracks, not allowing for proper filtration. Maintenance, the cracks have to be vacuumed a few times per year. And cost, a large initial cost to the homeowner for materials and construction. Although cost shouldn't be seen as a barrier if the homeowner is willing to pay for the construction and the driveway. Now here's Olivia to talk about benchmarking and costs.
Thank you, Austin. So in our research on coming over about permeable pavement, we wanted to look at cities that have already implemented permeable pavement in their code. We found 8 cities that we thought were important to Oshkosh, but today we're only going to go over 3 of them, but all 8 will be listed in our written report. The first one that I'd like to discuss is Olympia, Washington. It's similar in size to Oshkosh. Their project was permeable pavement on their sidewalks and residential areas. They did a residential survey afterwards and found that the interest increased dramatically. This was allowed Olympia to refine their municipal codes to allow permeable pavement for residential areas. And this is important to Oshkosh because it shows that by residential interest and working with the residents, they were able to work to the residential's benefits and change their municipal codes. The second one that I'd like to discuss is Banasha, Wisconsin, which is 15 minutes north of Oshkosh. They have similar geographics to Oshkosh. Their project was lakeshore residential homes on Lake Winnebago. Their current pavement ordinance does not specifically say that permeable pavement is allowed, but they do highly encourage systems that help with stormwater management, which permeable pavements help with. Another key contributor to Banasha's project was the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources because they have restrictions on runoffs, which could be a possible barrier, but it is a small one. The residential interest in Banasha also increased due to, some costs that go with permeable pavements is that we really want to hit that it's a residential expense. The residents are going to be paying for most of it, including materials with the types of pavement that they want to use. Exact costs will be laid out in our written report. Other costs include the maintenance of the systems by cleaning it out, installation, and location of where they want to place their system. There's higher initial costs with permeable pavements, but due to their long life expectancy, they outweigh the long-term and the benefit. We also want to hit that there's no real cost to the city except for their time and effort in the process. There could possibly be a cost for materials for an educational campaign, which Steve will detail in a couple slides. And with permeable pavements, there will be a huge benefit that comes back to the city because with their Oshkosh stormwater management issues. So now Steve's going to go over our proposal.
Thanks, Olivia. So to summarize what we know that the waterways surrounding Oshkosh and the Fox Valley are important due to our reliance on them for both our health and our recreation. And we know that stormwater management technologies such as permeable pavement can help improve local waterways. We also know that we want to encourage the adoption of stormwater management practices by residents, such as the current rain barrel credit system that Oshkosh already has in place. And we know that at least some Oshkosh residents are interested in using permeable pavement. We know that Oshkosh has used permeable pavement around the city and to positive results. And we know that there are some concerns with residential applications, as discussed earlier, with permeable pavement, but they're either manageable or they ultimately result in a cost to the resident themselves. And we know that the current municipal code already allows for permeable pavement in certain situations, such as in overlay zoning districts, which are specifically for driveways, and for patios. With all of this in mind, our proposal is that the city of Oshkosh allow for the residential use of permeable pavement by either amending Oshkosh's municipal code so that permeable pavement is permitted, or by providing a means of applying for a permit to use permeable pavement. To accomplish this, in our proposal, we're going to provide examples of how we think Oshkosh's code should be written. And as well, we're going to provide multiple examples from other cities that we've found, as Olivia mentioned earlier, to kind of base how the Oshkosh code is made. So it can be refined specifically for Oshkosh. As a quick example though, what's up on the screen right now is an example from Minneapolis. Their municipal code is written really well. It's short, but it's also detailed. So we use them as an example just because it's really well written. Other considerations would be something like an application form. This would provide additional oversight and greater control over the implementation if there's concerns about some of these things. And also, as Olivia mentioned earlier, we could also have some sort of educational campaign, although this would potentially provide or increase some costs to the city, but it is another option. In conclusion, green infrastructure such as permeable pavement is the future. And because of the benefits they provide, we would love to see Oshkosh continue to be a leader and innovator in implementing these types of technologies.
Any questions for this group?
This is Mayor Palmieri. I have
Go ahead, Lori.
Okay. I have a question for the group. So in consideration of the green infrastructure in some of your other cities, the permeable pavement as one element of potential green infrastructure, I'm wondering if you've also looked at low-tech options such as grass street or the two-track strip type driveways where there's significantly less concrete but more grass still as an alternative to permeable the technological system.
So I couldn't hear a lot of the question, but I think what you're asking is if we've looked at other things that aren't necessarily classified as permeable pavement, but do something similar, like the grass strip down the middle?
Correct.
Non-concrete based options.
Non-concrete based options. So one thing that we did see in our research is that there are a lot of different types of these permeable pavement.
10 different ones.
Yeah, there's at least 10 different, if not even more than that, when you get down into the specific differences between them all. And we realized that some of those will not be suitable for Oshkosh. Ultimately, we believe it's going to be up to the contractors and the city if they want to put something specific in the code to, only allow certain types. But we did not look specifically at the particular ones that you're talking about. We just looked in general to see, the entire swath of permeable pavement, the different types and how they've impacted different municipalities. So I guess I can't say necessarily that we saw anything specific like what you're talking about.
However, there are several types of permeable paver systems that incorporate grass pests within its structuring. And these are very beneficial for maintaining soil structure and preventing erosion.
Were there any that seemed especially good for Wisconsin, where we have obviously a lot of different variable temperatures throughout the year, because I know in the past, people have cited concerns about there being a lot of freezing and melting and things like that, and that messing with the permeable pavement.
It depends on the system and the material that you're using, but in particular, but in more cell ones, where such as with the brick that you can see on campus here at Sage, actually, or no, going back to the grass example, just because it's on my mind, the freezing concern is nowhere near the same issue. However, other materials, I think it is porous asphalts and porous concretes, do suffer from these issues a bit more.
Also, another interesting aspect that kind of relates to your question is in a lot of cases, these types of asphalt or pavement require less salt in the winter, making it so that there's less of the type of damage that the previous group talked about, because there's just not as much surface to get slippery in the first place.
To go further with that, are there any that seem to be a bigger benefit than having concrete, which can also crack and have issues with our winters?
Yes, there are many that are derived from, for lack of a better term, gravel, but it's not gravel in the sense of a gravel driveway. It is small rocks that are made as fill, or then filled into plastic cells, and they stay in place, but it is rock. But it's not concrete, but it is pre-existing rocks. And there's also like ways to reuse old concrete material and make them as like mesh them together into porous material. There's a lot of options, and not all of them involve concrete or asphalt.
Ken, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify, this proposal is focusing solely on residential and not commercial?
Correct.
Yes.
Are there any federal grants that you know of for residents to do this type of thing?
I don't know of any grants. There's a technical standard put up by the Wisconsin DNR for the construction of them, but I don't think there's grants associated with it.
Okay. Is there any concern? I noticed that you used Banasha as an example. Are there any concerns about implementing such a zoning change in terms of relative to the proximity to waterways?
Actually, the permeable pavers improve the water quality because impervious pavements are what cause stormwater runoff. In many states, I don't know specifically offhand the ones for right here, but in many areas, the local DNR requires no more than 25% impervious surfaces when you're around a waterway. By implementing permeable pavement systems, this broadens the kinds of developments you can have while still conserving our precious waterways.
So the hypothesis being that you're using the natural structures of the ground to filter the water prior to it getting to a waterway or the groundwater itself.
That is correct. You're using nature to do its job.
This is Mayor Palmieri again. So I noticed in some other subdivisions outside of Oshkosh, some newer development where there may be like twin dominiums or condos next to each other, and noticing that there are these kind of gravel dividers in between the two driveways rather than one big concrete driveway that's shared by two units. I don't know what that's called, if it's some kind of gravel drainage system in between. But I'm also wondering if in any of the other cities looked at when we give a stormwater credit when someone has a rain barrel, are they doing any kind of stormwater credit to incentivize residents to utilize permeable pavement systems?
I believe I did see some examples of different municipalities providing some sort of credits. I don't think it's like across the board. They all do it, obviously, but I do believe I've seen a couple that have provided some sort of stormwater credits. Yes.
And this is Brandon. I'll just touch on that too, and maybe James can chime in as well. But it's my understanding, for instance, if a permit comes in for a permeable patio application and it gets approved, that structure does not get added to our impervious surface layer. Which is, every parcel has that, and that I do believe is what drives the stormwater runoff tax cost. So it's essentially, if someone was able to do a driveway with it, they wouldn't have that amount of square footage as part of their assessment for impervious surface. So it's a credit in a sense if you were to change one to the other.
Have any municipalities that you've come across been successful in migrating from a residential program to a new construction or commercial program?
From what I've seen, it typically goes the other way around. They start commercial and then they move into residential. Do you all remember?
That's what I've seen.
Yeah.
Even here in the city of Oshkosh.
Go ahead. Did I misunderstand your question?
No. It's I'm just thinking that in terms of scale, you have all these residences, but the largest collection points are large employer parking lots, the university itself where students park there, places where cars sit for 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, the shopping centers, the things like that. I mean, how does the wastewater issue in runoff and stormwater of those places compare to all of the residents combined? And is there a better way to start? Is commercial a place to start, or is it residential, or does one to get a toe in the door? Doesn't matter.
So if I understand your question correctly, so Oshkosh already does have multiple places that have implemented permeable pavement of some sorts. So I don't know what the comparison would be between, like, if all Oshkosh residents implemented some sort of permeable pavement, but obviously we can't force people to do it. So we just want to provide people the opportunity to be able to use permeable pavement similar to the way that it's used in commercial currently.
As an easy example, the Menominee Arena, the parking lot there already implements a permeable paver system. Here on campus, and I don't believe many of the parking lots do, but just outside Sage, we have a permeable paver system with the very beautiful brickwork. And while that's a different category from commercial and residential, it's worth mentioning that a large institution does already implement it, and as well as the Menominee Arena. Yes, Dr. McPhee?
I just want to add that all of the permeable pavement that's used in Oshkosh currently is concrete based. Well, there's a small exception in Menominee Park, but it's concrete based. And I would also like to encourage the city to think about approving non-concrete based, because concrete in and of itself is an incredibly environmentally damaging material, and I'd like to see it get away from that.
I would also like to see that.
It's just that my business is located in a building that is nothing but concrete. All of our parking is concrete based. And so I'm trying to think beyond the residential application to retrofitting, facilities within the city and how we could leverage this to potentially springboard into incentivizing the conversion of some facilities to permeable pavement.
Yes.
If I may add a little bit to that, commercial properties can already utilize this as a part of their stormwater management plan development during the site plan review process. So that's why this group is focusing on residential, because it's already an option for non-residential.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Ken, if the parking lot got reconstructed or the property in general went through the plan development phase, that's where all that becomes allowable.
Excellent.
So I guess this seems like an engineering inventor opportunity to devise some kind of machine that would perforate existing concrete to allow percolation. And I'm being a little bit facetious and a little bit serious.
I apologize. I really couldn't understand what you said.
So this isn't a process that happens to concrete or asphalt that's currently there. Am I understanding? Yeah. Oh, I couldn't hear. Okay, right. I couldn't hear.
I heard something about making a joke, but I couldn't hear the joke.
I think we should move to the last group just because of time. Thank you, guys.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nina, and along with me today is Taylor and Christian, and then joining us online will be Quinn. We are here to speak about the global e-waste disposal issue and our plan for local change. Quinn will start us off by introducing our main concern for sustainability.
Thank you, Nina. So for some background and context into the issue, in 2009, the state of Wisconsin passed a ban on putting electronic waste into landfills. This was a great step for local environmental sustainability, but it emphasized the shipping of e-waste to third world countries. This sparked the need to create local recycling programs and centers for citizens to dispose of their e-waste responsibly. The most crucial aspect of citizen-driven recycling is access to information about where they can take their electronics, coupled with knowledge of why it is important to recycle their electronics in the first place. This whole issue as a whole is very complex and is an international problem with many social and health problems in third world countries. Next slide, please. So this brings us to the social implications of current management practices. First world countries have the proper infrastructure for managing electronic waste and also have the necessary legislation to back it. These laws prevent the improper disposal of e-waste that harms the environment. Many states do not outlaw the shipping of e-waste to third world nations, which lack the necessary infrastructure to properly dispose of the electronic waste. And there's usually little to no legislation in place in those countries to prevent e-waste from being disposed of in a harmful manner. These reasons result in harmful practices being used, as shipping the e-waste is not efficient and increases carbon emissions, and a lack of infrastructure for managing the e-waste in developing nations results in improper methods being utilized. As you can see from the photo on the screen, the workers are openly burning the e-waste with no protective gear, which makes the inhalation of the fumes much more hazardous. Next slide, please. In terms of current management, some of our current methods being utilized by developing countries include burying, open air burning, acid baths, and dumping the e-waste into open water bodies. These methods prevent the recovery of a large amount of recyclable material and cause harmful materials to enter the atmosphere, which is carried by the wind for hundreds of miles across the countries that practice these methods and their neighbors, harming the environment and people within them. Similarly, the materials will also leach into the waterways or soil around them, which causes harmful effects on the environment that involve increased toxicity. And next slide again, please. So what we're recommending that the city create and manage a biannual e-waste recycling event hosted at City Hall. Hosting the event biannually will allow those who miss one event to be able to make the next one. Next slide. In order to advertise to a wide audience, outreach would need to consist of an extensive advertising campaign on as many social media platforms as possible, spreading awareness through newspaper and magazine ads, and relying on word of mouth. The city website could also be updated to include information regarding the problems associated with e-waste, as well as provide information about all of the services around the city regarding e-waste recycling, including the event we are proposing. So ideally, the event will be carried out by a third party, such as Recycle That Stuff, which Nina will now tell you guys about.
Thanks, Quinn. So we looked at a few different third-party vendors, but this one stuck out to us in particular. Recycle That Stuff is #1 in the state, in contracts with several other cities in Wisconsin, such as the city of Neenah, which Taylor will talk about soon. Recycle That Stuff is certified through the DNR and are a reputable recycler of electronics. They also provide a no landfill guarantee to each host that contracts with them. So Recycle That Stuff has a base fee of $200 for a 3-hour event and $275 for a 4-hour event on Saturdays. If you already think this is a good price, I'd like to let you know that, as I learned from James Robbie, our Director of Public Works, that the DNR reimburses cities to hold recycling events much like this one we're promoting today. As a group, we believe that a 4-hour event would be best for all the residents in Oshkosh to attend. So because the DNR would reimburse the city about 28% of the event fee, the price would decline from $275 to $198. So saving the $77 makes room for some smaller costs the event would require, because Recycle That Stuff does take care of the labor, packaging, and transportation of all the electronics allocated that day. So advertising would be something that the city would have to take care of by themselves, based on a flyer that Recycle That Stuff would give them. So printing and distribution fees would be collected. But these extra costs can be avoided by advertising on city recycling flyers that they already send out to residents. So because we're proposing that the event be at City Hall, James Robbie and Bob Saul from Public Works and Sanitation said that the city might feel a little bit more comfortable if a few more of their own employees would be working the event with Recycle That Stuff. This would mean some overtime payment to those staff, and we were only thinking about 1 to 2 staff necessary for the event. Now Christian will talk about what kinds of barriers would come with contracting with Recycle That Stuff.
Thank you. Thank you, Nina. Some of the barriers presented include traffic regulations, scheduling conflicts, insurance policy alignment, and providing information to citizens. Regarding traffic, the event would require an entrance and an exit to host, and City Hall would have plenty of space to drop off electronics safely. For scheduling, avoiding weekends like the Oshkosh Farmers Market would alleviate traffic concerns on public roads. For employees, avoiding holidays and hunting weekends would give us more available employees to assist with the event. Scheduling conflicts would be solved by the city's special events coordinator. Insurance policies, making sure that the third party's insurance coverages align with the city's in regards to proper disposal and safety for citizens engaging in the event. Providing information to citizens, citizens would need to be informed on dates and a location and accepted waste for the event. The City of Oshkosh's brochure would be a good outlet for this. Despite the barriers, we have stakeholder support. James Robbie, the Director of Public Works, favored the minimum requirements of work from the city's employees due to a third-party assistance. There is also a financial incentive through the DNR reimbursement of hosting this event that James favored as well. Pam Reuter, the Executive Director of Oshkosh Healthy Neighborhoods, recognizes that citizens have a demand for e-waste disposal, but may run into obstacles when using the Winnebago solid waste facility. She favors the accessibility that this event would provide for our citizens of Oshkosh. Now Taylor will cover our benchmarking research.
Thank you, Christian. So one important city to mention in terms of benchmarking is the city of Neenah, because we partially used their successful electronics waste management program to model our proposal. Also, the city of Neenah is within very close proximity to the city of Oshkosh, so their management system would be easily replicatable here. The city of Neenah uses Recycle That Stuff to package and dispose of electronic waste at their twice yearly events. These events are held at the Neenah City Garage on Tulla Road, which is municipal property within the city and allows for easier access to the space. Neenah city planners that we interviewed discussed large turnouts to these events and also explained that Recycle That Stuff is a great company to work with. So part of the success of these events in the city of Neenah can be attributed to high levels of advertisement by the Neenah City website. The Neenah City website includes event collection dates and logistics, electronic waste that is accepted and refused at these events, additional recycling information as well. Also, on the right side of the screen here, you can see a flyer that Recycle That Stuff provided for the city of Neenah to advertise the event. This flyer includes information on costs of certain items that are accepted, location for the events, and other details. So this type of advertisement is one of the main components within our proposal because it increases awareness about issues associated with electronic waste and also provides details to residents that are important to consider. So the most important reason that we're proposing these collection events within the city of Oshkosh is because of the significance for sustainability that these events would have. Electronics waste generation has an exponential growth rate, meaning that more waste is generated every year, so the necessity for management systems is only going to increase as time goes on. Current methods of dealing with electronic waste have environmental as well as ethical implications, as Quinn discussed earlier, and they typically involve shipping waste to developing countries where the waste is dealt with in unsustainable ways, putting human and environmental health at risk. So due to these concerns, dealing with electronic waste within our own borders and recycling as many materials as possible from these items is the most sustainable way to address the issue. In conclusion, through increased education on the negative effects of improper disposal, as well as the benefits of proper disposal, along with convenient collection events, the City of Oshkosh's sustainability initiatives will be strengthened. Also, we'd like to thank everybody for their time to listen to our proposal, and we hope to gain your support for our sustainability initiative.
Does anyone have any questions for this group? Okay, seeing none, I just want to tell you guys, we get these presentations every semester or so, and you guys just knocked it out of the park. These were very impressive. All 4 presentations were terrific. Thank you so much. Thank you for doing the work. Thank you for sharing it with us. We're really looking forward to your reports. And well, just thanks. And thank you, Jim, for letting them work with us.
Well, thank you, Marty, and everybody else for letting us take up your valuable time with these. It's a really good partnership.
It is, yes.
Okay, we'll log out here and let you guys get on with your meeting. If you could just stick around for a second.
Okay. Jim, you might want to give us back our screen too. I don't know if he was gone before that. Can you? Oh, okay, got it. There we are again. Wasn't that fun? Wow. Okay, next thing on our agenda tonight is the duck ordinance. We may have mentioned this once or twice before. So we are going to, I trust you all had a chance to look at the information that we had in our packet. We had 3 different things to look at. There had been just a very small change in what we had looked at the last time. Brandon, I don't know, do you want to quickly review that for us maybe?
Sure. Do you think I should you want me to bring up the physical document or just kind of talk about the changes that I made?
Why don't you talk about it, and then if we need it, we can pull it up.
Okay. So basically, this decision was made. The one document shows, I forget how many other cities, was it 8 or maybe 10?
10.
That I looked at to get an idea of what their chicken ordinance said regarding total number allowed. Again, every city, kind of does things a little differently. So I'm just going to use chicken as the reference because they all basically allowed chickens. Well, you'll be, look at the document, you'll be able to see. I think I said if they do or don't. So based on that information, I thought it was okay to proceed with recommending changes to not only the chicken ordinance, but also within the duck ordinance itself to allow for 6. And that would somewhat coincide with the other document, the survey, that showed, roughly it was a 50-50 match between, keeping it at 4 or moving it to 5 or 6. So those are the 2 supporting documents that council will have in their ultimate determination moving forward with, increasing the total number of chickens and or ducks to 6. Again, if they even pass the duck ordinance itself. So that would be an amendment to that previous ordinance, and then you can see as it's written in the duck ordinances, the same language can maybe be applied to the chicken ordinance. Any questions?
So what you've presented us with here is the actual ordinance that we're presenting to the council, correct? Once we
I'm not
approve it?
100% sure, but I think maybe it still has to go to the attorneys to kind of review.
But I mean, this is what we'll pass out of our committee with a maximum of 6 ducks under C permit required number 2.
Yep, and the other part that I changed was we had talked about that incubation period of time. So I did a little bit of research on that, and I did add the exception into that one. I don't remember exactly where in the document it is, but where it talks about not being allowed in the home.
Under
With the
standard
exception
practice
of,
number 1. Yep.
Mhm.
Exception
Like I said, the
ducklings
health
can be.
inspector was okay with that. So
Okay.
I
Does
think those
anyone
are the
see
only
anything
changes.
else on here that they would question or want to be changed? Any concerns? The ones that we expressed before, I think have been addressed.
Yeah, I believe those were the last 2 things that we were looking at.
Okay. And just so you all know, you can either raise your hand like Bob did if we can actually see you, or you can raise your hand electronically too, which would be if you hover just before the video button when you have your participant screen open. Just a reminder. Okay, Bob. You're on mute.
There we go. So Brandon, what I think you hear, what I think I'm hearing you say is that we sign off on the duck ordinance, barring any potential changes, which I don't think there will be. And at the same time, you want us to say that we would also like the chicken ordinance to be in line with the duck ordinance in regards to the number of chickens allowed, as well as the exemption for an incubation period.
Right. Yeah, I would say that we would. I don't know if it even needs to be done here. Honestly, I would just think that they have to coincide. So.
Okay.
And I think
whether
that
it's on here
suggestion
or
was that suggestion made by legal, I think.
and it wasn't suggested by anybody. It's just the way that I wrote it in there. We had said a combination of the 2. So you could have 6 chickens or 6 ducks, or 4 ducks and 2 chickens, or however. Some of the other cities, they have it like that, where you're allowed a total number of animals It doesn't matter which ones they are. So that was kind of my logic on it. And the county allows 6 total, no matter what. So unless you live on a farm or something.
Okay, would anybody like to make a motion on this ordinance so we can finish discussion on it?
I'll make a motion to move the ordinance.
Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, now let's discuss this. Are there any changes that anybody sees or feels necessary based on what we've got at this point? No? Okay, in that case, I think that we should call the vote on this, Brandon. And a yes means that we approve it as written, and a no means you don't want it.
All right. We'll go ahead and start with Bob.
Yes.
Michelle.
Aye.
Brad.
Aye.
Vic.
Aye.
Pat. Michael.
Aye.
Who am I missing?
Margie.
Oh, it's just, oh no, Ken. That's the one I was waiting. Ken.
Aye.
And Margie.
Aye.
Okay, so that passes 8-0. Congratulations.
Okay, and we will make it a point to go over this with Aaron before it goes to the city council. Okay, one thing off our to-do list. Michelle, do you have a report for us tonight on the Menominee Park situation?
Yeah, we if anyone's been by the sites, you'll have seen that we have some exciting things going on. Some of them being that we are, I collaborated with the Bluebird Restoration Association of Wisconsin representative for Winnebago County, David Misterek, who helped us with the help of the Parks Department and Bill Sturm install some Eastern Bluebird nest boxes at the pump house and at the Millers Bay sites. So I'm going to be monitoring those every week throughout the nesting season to see if we have any nesting activity, which is just awesome. We've been wanting to install birdhouses for quite some time, so it was great to identify some birds that really needed the help that we could install bird boxes for. We also applied for a Bird City grant to help us with recouping the costs of the installation of the nest boxes, as well as improve the habitat itself with some new plants and things like that. And we're still waiting for the results on that. They should be announced in May. So I should have an update in June, and we're working right now on finalizing our schedule. I was hoping to be able to share that today, but I had a little bit of a late start getting that out this year. So it's still coming, but typically what we do is I do know we're going to be doing work that Saturday of Memorial Day. That is a time that we typically have a big day, since everybody has a little bit more of a weekend usually on that. So this year we're going to use that to do our wood chip trail. So we'll be laying down cardboard and putting wood chips on top of it. And that just helps to have a nice organic way of preventing weeds on our trails during the season, as well as part of the viewing area. So we do have that scheduled for Saturday, and then Sunday would be our rain date that same Sunday. And that's the weekend of Memorial Day. I don't remember the exact days offhand, of course, because I have my cell phone and not my computer. So I'm I'm running a little bit on the fly today, so I apologize for that. So yeah, lots of good new things happening.
That will be May 30th. No, May 29th.
Okay.
For Saturday and May 30th for a rain date.
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you, Margie.
Sure. Thank you for that report. That's great. And that's really good about the bluebirds. So they'll like that. Bluebirds like having places to nest. Or so Dave tells me.
Yeah, he's a really great partner. It's great working with him.
Yes, he is. He's very involved in Birdfest too. And I should probably just, oh, never mind. I was going to say I was going to give a call out for Birdfest, but I just realized it was Saturday. I was driving back from being away and I totally missed it. Oops. Okay, moving on. Meetings in person or virtual. And Brandon, is this an all or nothing, or is it hybrid?
Hybrid is not an option.
Okay, good.
So
As the chair, I would like to say I'm very thankful to hear that, because we've tried that in the past and it's been very difficult to run a meeting. So I guess we can discuss which you would prefer.
yeah,
I
it's going to be
suspect a number of us have been vaccinated by now, so it might be a little easier to stomach than it was before.
Yeah, it is going to be, a discussion and action item. So we will vote on it tonight, and that'll be what we do going forward until we decide that we want to try again, I think. I wasn't exactly told what would happen if we voted one way or the other and wanted to go back the other way. But just, we can discuss it now, and then ultimately we have to make a vote.
Okay, so we can vote now to, for example, go back to in person, but if the rate would rise again or something, we may have the potential to go back to virtual for a month or two. We hope.
I mean, I would hope that could be figured out and worked. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why that wouldn't be okay, but
Okay, and with this, it's clear that City Hall has opened again.
no, I don't. Meetings, to my knowledge, still are all virtual. But I think this is kind of the beginning step to get a feel for where boards and committees are at. And maybe Bob, do you have more information?
I think
than I do?
Bob might have something on that.
I actually don't have, because I'm no longer on the council. I had that conversation, but I still see that Mayor Palmieri is here. And she might be able to give us, if she's listening in, she might be able to give us insight in regards to the conversation that the council may have had in regards to providing direction to staff, or even Council Member Wojciechowski as well.
Yes, I'd like to allow Aaron to take that if he would like to. Otherwise, yes, there are going to be in-person meetings with council. I believe we were going to start next month, but we were leaving it up to each board and commission to decide when they would like to go back in person, or if for now. But the public participation piece is still going to be virtual for council.
Okay, Aaron, do you have anything to add to that?
I believe, looking at my calendar, our first in-person meeting for council will be May 25th. At least that's what I put in my calendar. So not the next one, but the following one, we plan to return in person.
Okay, so it would begin affecting us at our next meeting, which is scheduled for June 7th. Okay, preference from anyone? Anyone want to lead off with this?
Michelle has her hand raised.
Michelle, go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So if we go back to in person, there is not an option for somebody to attend virtually. Is that correct?
That is correct. Was that your question too, Pat?
Well, kind of, because Lori or Aaron said that the council will still have the public participation piece virtually. Is that not an option or not? Is,
I think if we go in person, that it's going to be open to the public to attend those in person as well, because it will not be hybrid, is what I was told.
I think it's, I don't know about the city of Oshkosh, but at this point, what is it for Winnebago County? 30%, roughly 30% is fully vaccinated at this point. It's still less than half. I mean, maybe it's a higher percentage for the people who are members of the Sustainability Advisory Board, but and I don't know how often we'll get public participation, but right now the vaccination rate isn't over 50% in terms of full vaccination. Is that correct? I looked at the county health department website tonight, and we don't have a slope of 0 yet in terms of number of cases. It's still a positive slope. There's still an increase in number of cases, you know, so.
Yeah, my personal thought is, I mean, it's not up to me, obviously, but it's, you know what, if you vote tonight to stay virtual, the opportunity to go the other way is there in the future. And I don't know, you know, these meetings don't seem to be too troublesome. Sometimes there's some issues, right? But
Ken, do you have an opinion on this?
It's a tough call. I think as um I'm thinking along the lines of Pat, is that there should be some benchmarks hit in terms of vaccination. I think just because there is a potential public participation aspect to this. So I have more questions than I have answers, I'm sorry to say.
Does anybody else wish to share an opinion on this? Michelle again?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Pat said because part of my job with the university is to watch all this stuff very closely. So yeah, Winnebago County, we have, about 30% fully vaccinated. And it's a little bit more, that we have, at least one, vaccine dose. But just the way things have been going in Wisconsin, things have been, basically no significant change or increasing. And with the increasing cases just in neighboring states, I just think that's something to consider, as well as the environmental benefit of doing virtual meetings right now anyway, with people not having to drive to get to the meeting.
This is definitely true. Bob? Are you on mute? Oh, there we go. I can hear you now. I heard you.
I'm not used to my new device, so I'm used to using a touch device, and this one is not a touch device. So I go back and forth on all of this because I'm very active out in the community, and like in the school board, we've been meeting in person and taking public comments since August. All the craziness of this last fall and everything too. But at the same, I also I've been watching the numbers in regards to our neighboring states, in regards to how that trend is similar to what the trend was earlier this fall and summer, as well, in regards to how we have followed suit in some of those areas in regards to increase of COVID cases. So I think my gut tells me that we should stay in virtual and move out of virtual as we see more data coming out of the next month, 2 months, and everything. So I enjoy the face-to-face and seeing lots of people, but I'm also willing to go in the direction of the way that the advisory board wants to go. So,
Michelle?
Is the understanding if we go back to in person that masks are mandatory?
It would be through the end of May, I believe, because the cities, but after that, we don't know. And we wouldn't be back to in person technically until June. And in my experience, even having them be mandatory doesn't mean that people who may come from the outside to attend the meeting will choose to cooperate. I was at one meeting where they just plain told me, no, I'm not going to put on a mask. So,
but isn't there sorry for interrupting, but House, wasn't there a benchmark that you proposed for, just, I guess, tell us the process that's in place in regards to the benchmark that was added to the mask ordinance?
Yeah, so essentially it's the same that was passed by the previous council. The addition was that if a 50% vaccination rate in Winnebago County is reached, so that's fully vaccinated, if that's reached before the end of the month, then that would also lift the mask mandate. But if it's not, then we will have to revote on it again at the end of.
okay. Well, would anyone care to make a motion about voting one way or the other on this?
Pat has her hand raised.
I would move that we stay virtual for our next meeting and we can reconsider at our next meeting.
A second from anyone?
I'll second that.
Okay, Brandon, why don't you call the roll? I'm pretty sure it'll come out well.
Okay, so the motion is to stay virtual at least for our next meeting. We'll start with Bob.
Aye.
Michelle.
Aye.
Brad.
Aye.
Vic.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Michael.
Aye.
Ken.
Aye.
And Margie.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 8-0. We'll be virtual June 7th.
Okay.
And then Ken, if you have questions, like you had said, and if any of you have questions, please just shoot me an email. I will get them answered.
Okay. Thank you. Agenda items for a future meeting. Oh, which reminds me, I just wanted to mention, Michelle, when you have your schedule for Menominee Park, if you want to shoot that over to Brandon, he can put it up on the Facebook page. And Vic, I wanted to let you know that we did deliberately leave off a few items on tonight's agenda just because it was such a long agenda. We knew we had the students. Okay, moving on. Agenda items for a future meeting. Bob?
Sure. Brandon, I might need your help in forming this. So I was sought out by a community member who is looking to set up urban, I can't remember, it's urban culture or urban orchards. And so we, the thought was that we would have an educational discussion about the benefits of those within the urban areas of the city. And not just the sustainability aspects of it, but also like the zoning impacts and what works best there. and everything. So, do you know what I'm talking about, Brandon?
Okay. Did you say you kind of cut out? Was it urban? I didn't catch it.
Like urban permaculture,
Okay.
orchards. We have a resident who is working on setting up such a piece of land in our community, and thinks it's an opportunity for us to learn more and to potentially see if there's ways that we might be able to find more supportive avenues to making it happen.
I believe that person also is hoping to come before the Sustainability Board with a presentation to help educate all of us. So that is something that we do want to consider for a future meeting. I don't know if we have other things that we are going to be looking at in June, so there's no guarantee for June
Sure.
yet, but we do need to keep that on there for future meetings. So that's urban permaculture. Okay, does anybody else have anything that they're?
Go ahead, Michelle.
Michelle?
I just had a question because it's something that we would normally have on our agenda at this time. I'm assuming that the Oshkosh Farmers Market is not allowing, is still reduced this year, so we're probably not going to have a table there in scheduling. Is that correct?
That is not correct necessarily. I did check into it because I used to set it up for the Rental Housing Advisory Board also, and they do want to do it this year. We also have our civility project who's doing it, but you have to apply ahead of time, and you can have one a month maximum, but they decide on who comes in. And I'm so glad you brought that up because I did want to ask, in the past, Robert, who was on the board previously, was the one who really drove that. He was the one who set up, who worked the whole thing, who took it down. We no longer have Robert available. If there's anybody else on the board who would really like to take that over and make sure that it's staffed, or if, I guess I need to know what kind of interest there is there. And I had not called the person who was setting it up for us yet because I wanted to ask you guys that. So thank you for reminding me. Is there any interest in attending the farmers market, setting up for it? The city has a pop-up that we purchased right after the summer of 2019's farmers market was over pretty much. I think we used it once. Obviously last year we didn't use it at all. So it's pretty much brand new, but we do have to coordinate it with rehab, the rental housing, because we can't both use it the same week. It's not big enough for both of us. So we'd have to coordinate and make sure we weren't doing that at the same time. We do have tables for it that I hope are at City Hall. Maybe you could check on that, Brandon. They were in the community development office. And we also had
all the stuff is in my office.
They're in your
It's
office?
it's all right in my office, yep.
The two big white tables?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Those are actually mine, by the way.
Okay.
That's why I wondered where they were. How can I have a rummage sale, you know? And then you have the box of stuff. Okay,
yeah,
so
I think there's two
have
boxes.
everything.
Yep.
Okay. Is anybody thinking that sounds like fun? I personally took a look at my summer calendar and I don't think I'll be able to be there at all.
I would propose that we put it on either the June agenda or another agenda to think up ways to revamp for maybe next year. And to see what we would want to do, because I know in the past we also had some neat activities and different things to engage people, and I think that would be important when we do that. Of course, things might be a little bit different now anyway with COVID, with what kind of activities we would do, but
yeah, it's a pretty strict set of rules they've got. Okay, well, I put it down as farmer market for 2022. And I'll let rental housing know that anytime they want to do it would be fine because we won't be using the pop-up then. And Brandon, if you would like to get some of the tables out of your office, I can come get them. But if you don't mind, keep storing them for me till I'm ready for that rummage sale. No problem.
Yeah, they're fine. And I mean, and honestly, 2022 is going to be a great time to highlight everything that's been accomplished in 2021 from this board. I mean, if you think about it already from January till now, the things that have been accomplished, a lot of stuff. So it'd be nice to share that with everybody.
I agree. Pat, did you have anything for future agenda? Anything with solar or not yet, right? Oops, you're on mute.
Not for June.
Okay. Okay, we'll see nothing else. Oh, Bob.
I unmuted myself first before I waved my hand. So, also at some point, I'd like to invite back into presentation about their group of what they're doing in regards to urban farming and also potential expansion of community gardens in the community as well. A collab relationship that expands community gardens. So, but I'd like to hold that off until latter part of the summer or even early fall.
Okay, making a note of that. Yes, Growing Oshkosh was actually the recipient of our the Beautification and Leadership Award that we give with Rotary. So it would be nice to have them. You know, that one that Ken won the year before, and then we made him be on the board. It's been terrible, Ken. We love having you on the board. Okay, then our next meeting will be on.
Marty.
Oh, sorry. Michelle.
Sorry, I just want to make sure that the nominee park shoreland stuff is still on the agenda for June. So
Oh, yes. Yeah, we cannot escape that.
Right? It's got to be on every month of the
All
season.
summer long.
And I just want to add one thing too. So regarding, you know, we had the one meeting with the developers, or not the developers, but the architects for the Four Seasons building, and the parks director was there. And it's an initiative, you know, it's, as we spoke about the electric vehicle charging stations, you know, they showed it on the plan. It's a concept plan. You know, the entire thing is way over budget. And I've been actively keeping my eye open for grants to fund just the infrastructure to have you know, the electricity there for future grants, for when we can maybe, you know, purchase an actual charging station or a couple. And I will tell you that I've recently found out that one of the larger corporations in town that we talked to and tried to, you know, see if they wanted to fund this project with us as a sponsor, ended up saying no. And I have reached out to a couple other businesses and stuff, and it hasn't gone anywhere. So I just want you all to be aware. And if you know anyone, or if you think you have connections, that anybody would want to be a sponsor, to try and help, you know, fund, I don't even know what it would cost, but to get the infrastructure in place in this parking lot so we can, you know, have electric vehicle charging stations in that park. If you know anyone, let me know.
Bob, did you have something to share on that?
Well, yeah, I guess I was going to ask that number of how much we think it might cost. So if we can figure out what that number is, it might be easier to target who we ask as well. So and realizing that, you know, the Four Seasons space and that adjoining parking area isn't going to be done, you know, soon, and so everything changes. You know, the price could change from year to year in regards to supplies and availability and such. But I think if we can get a ballpark number of what that is, I know I'd be willing to talk to a couple entities to see if they'd be willing to contribute. So
I have two bits of information on this too. One is when we discussed the Four Seasons building last month, if you'll recall, we were told that the infrastructure did not end up being underneath the asphalt, that it's actually run through the ground nearby. So if they do build the parking lot without including that, it doesn't totally mean that it can't happen later, as I had been afraid it would. The other thing is that this does come before the Plan Commission tomorrow night. Four Seasons building does. So I should get a little bit better idea at that point about what's included and what's not, I hope. I don't know for sure. I didn't read everything yet. Okay,
Brad has his hand up.
Brad.
Yeah, Brandon, I didn't know if you were able to, if the city qualifies for the Public Service Commission's Energy Innovation Grant Program. So the university, I was part of a team, we just got a grant for a few $100,000 to connect the biodigester to the facilities building next door so that the heat will be provided from the digester to that building. Instead of using natural gas heat from from Wisconsin Public Service. But they have several opportunities or areas that you can apply for funding, and one of those is electric vehicle infrastructure. So I'd look through the public service.
That was the one we talked about back in like November, December, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm assuming maybe that'll come around again.
Yep. Yeah. To my knowledge, they'll do that annually.
So if that does come around again, because we now have that literal image and it's in a plan per se, we can apply for that grant. You know, before we didn't have that. So that I was told that we weren't ready to apply.
The other comment I'll make about the cost is, my guess is, if you know the specs on the building, there are lots of folks, in the solar industry who may be willing to give you a quote, basically at no cost, as long as they know the size of the roof space that they're working with.
Not necessarily for the Four Seasons building, but for anything, right?
I guess, yeah, I was thinking in relation to the Four Seasons building, but yeah, right, for anything.
Okay, yeah. They have made the decision not to include solar energy on the building itself because they didn't design it with enough, the roof couldn't take the load, but they did not rule out having solar cells in a bank next to it on the ground mounted ones. Or actually, they also mentioned, didn't they, Brandon, about having them actually on car chargers themselves to have that be solar powered? There was a lot of talk going on. I don't know where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things. Again, it's all just concept stuff now, but at least, the word is out there. They put it in the document, so we have it. And again, it comes down to funding it.
Just like everything else in the world, huh?
Yeah, basically. So I am in communication with an individual from Faith Technologies who's done some of these projects around the area, and I think I have the last couple pieces of the puzzle that I needed for him. He needed to know what type of transformers were nearby and stuff, what kind of power was there. So maybe I can follow up with him again, and maybe he can give us a free quote or something. I don't know.
Okay. Is
Hey, Mike.
there?
Could
Who
I
is
could I
that?
say something? This is
Aaron.
Aaron, sorry, for the
Yes.
council. Just perhaps something to think about for the committee, and I'm kind of soliciting ideas. Right now, we're kind of in a generating stage of ideas for how council will spend the ARPA funds, the 20 million that we are getting for COVID relief, which we're still waiting to see what exactly all that money can be used for. But we're generating ideas on how it should be spent. So if committee has ideas of projects that you perhaps would like to see funded, initiatives, anything, I'd love to have a discussion with this committee about that. Because I think there are some good uses for sustainability that we could use that money for. So just something for committee to think about. I want to hear ideas. Thank you.
June agenda item.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Okay, wait a minute. Boy, I've got a long list. There's my
Aaron,
test.
if you could one more time, Aaron, what was the abbreviation for that?
ARP, I believe it's the American Action Rescue Plan is what it stands for. I could be incorrect, something along those lines.
Thank you.
We're going to be doing workshops, but I know we're going to be getting ideas from community members and committees. But if there's something of immediate that you think would be a good use of it, I'd love to hear it.
We had some
Great, thank you for
presentations tonight that presented some good ideas. We had presentations tonight that presented good ideas.
Yes, we had a whole bunch of great ones. Okay, does anybody have anything else? Brad, I see your hands up. I'm not sure it's a new old hand.
Nope, just an old hand, sorry.
That's okay. Okay, seeing no other hands, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Brandon. Roll.
Sure can. Okay, we'll start with Bob.
Aye.
Michelle.
Aye.
Brad.
Aye.
Vic.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye. Aye.
Michael.
Aye.
Ken.
Aye.
And Margie.
Aye. Okay, meeting adjourned. See y'all here next month. Same time, same place.
Have a good night, everyone.
Goodbye.
Night.